these are different types of market failures and examples of each, so you can see how the outcome in each case is not socially optimal. Let's look first at externalities. Externalities occur when there are costs or benefits to anyone not in control of the transaction or decision-making process. For example, lots of people talk on their cell phones while driving. Doesn't this cost some people other than that?
Okay, you're still on.
From a social standpoint, talking on cell phones while driving is a market failure because too much of this activity goes on.
Oh dear. Turn yellow. Oh. Oh. You should put on a playlist for economics.
The unhindered market differs from a socially optimal outcome, then the market has failed. Okay, let me give you some different types of market failures and examples of each so that you can see how the outcome in each case is not socially optimal. Let's look first at externalities. Externalities occur when there are costs or benefits to anyone not in control of the transaction or decision-making process. For example, lots of people talk on their cell phones while driving. Doesn't this impose costs on people other than that driver? From a social standpoint, talking on cell phones while driving is a market failure because too much of this activity goes on. On the flip side, think about people who get flu shots. In this case, immunization benefits not only the person getting the shot, but also everyone around this person who doesn't catch the flu from them. Yet every year, from a social standpoint, too few people get their flu shots. A second type of market failure is called public goods. Public goods are commodities or services that, from a social standpoint, tend to be underproduced because it is not clear who would or should pay for them in a free market setting. We'll get into this more specifically in episode 33, but examples include national defense and roads. The next category, adverse selection. One example of adverse selection would be health insurance. Ideally, the entire population would have health coverage, but you'll find that some people decide the cost of insurance isn't worth it, particularly people who never use the insurance. If these people drop out of the market, then the remaining insurance users are a slightly less healthy segment of the population. This causes premiums to rise so that more people drop out of the market. Ultimately, the least healthy segment of the population remains, and premiums are very high. A fourth category of market failure is moral hazard. With moral hazard, a commodity or service results in more risky behavior than would otherwise occur. Consider airbags in cars. This seems like a great safety device, doesn't it? And indeed, airbags do reduce fatalities. However, research shows that a greater percentage of cars with airbags are in accidents than cars without airbags. Why? Because people don't drive as carefully when the airbag is there as a safety net. So airbags represent a market failure in that they actually increase accidents even though fewer accidents are fatal. Other examples of moral hazard would be having a homeowner's insurance on a home that you're building in a flood-prone or fire-prone area, or even being a large financial institution if you know that you can get a government bailout. Although there are several types of market failures, we'll focus more closely on only two: externalities in episode 32 and public goods in episode 33. Next time, externalities.
Maybe you should put on
kind of interesting, huh?
Yeah.
I
don't know the crash
that actually that sounds like people who have airbags in their car are more likely to crash the car. That sounds.
Will you drive more? Hey, Ms. Ron, will you drive less carefully if you had airbags in your car?
I think initially when airbags first came into being put in cars,
yeah,
because not too long ago you didn't have airbags, and
really?
when you first get them, you kind of feel it's kind of like the thought was you were surrounded by pillows.
Yeah.
But all cars have them.
But now kids just grow up thinking that they're in there. Okay?
Also, airbags are pretty painful to get hit with.
Yeah, most people don't
You end up with a broken rib, but you don't go crashing, breaking your neck.
Remember when Zach crashed?
I think that's garbage.
Yeah, I don't.
I think that's statistic. Like, people are drive more recklessly when they don't have an airbag. Like, I can't. That just doesn't make sense.
No, I said I think it was a short term.
Yeah.
When
Just
they
like,
first put them in, I think that people did feel a little safer about driving at high speeds. Because you kind of felt that if you were driving down the turnpike,
like
it was okay to go 70 miles an hour.
before airbags, people just refused to go 70 miles per hour.
Well, you thought about it because you were going to hit something. I would argue, but now I don't think anyone thinks about it. They're just a given.
Because a car crash is still probably maybe thousands of dollars.
In life.
Hurts.
Okay, so maybe in the very beginning when they were just...
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the data.
Yeah.
And I also think that the majority of people don't really take, oh, there is a chance I might crash my car into account when they go out and drive.
I don't think so. I think the only people who do that who are driving, and it'd be interesting to talk to them.
I think maybe in the beginning when they're just putting airbags in cars.
Oh yeah, because 80% of them die
Right.
their first time.
Right.
So
Or the donors.
yeah, great for the organ donation community.
Yes. Okay.
Maybe you should go on a crash course.
Probably like 20 minutes.
So, okay, maybe no.
Let's do externalities. Note that externalities can involve either third-party costs, this would be a negative externality, or third-party benefits,
This is on
would be a positive
externalities.
externality. Let's address each of these in turn. Negative externalities occur when a decision or activity imposes costs on anyone not involved in making that
You
decision.
gotta know this.
Think of it this way. Every decision involves some cost to the decision maker. That's the private cost of your choice. But sometimes the decision imposes costs on others as well, which would be the external cost. Social cost, then, is the total cost to all members of society, or the sum of the cost to the decision maker, which is private cost, and to others, external cost. What this means is that if a decision imposes any kind of external cost, then the social cost will exceed the private cost. Think about this. Do you think that too many people use their cell phones while driving, or too few? Well, why do you think that is? The answer lies with this notion of externalities. Look at it this way. When you're deciding whether or not to get on your cell phone while you're driving, what are the private costs, i.e. the cost to you, the decision maker? Perhaps the cost of buying a cell phone in the first place, or maybe the minutes you'll be using, or the cost of sending a message. It might even occur to you that you're increasing the likelihood of you getting into an accident. Now, are there any costs to other people, people who have no control over your decision to use your phone while behind the wheel? What about the increased risks to them, or even just the annoyance of you driving like an idiot because you're on the phone? These are the external costs, or the costs you impose on others with your behavior. In the end, this discrepancy between the cost to you and the cost to society, which is the sum of the private and the external cost, leads to overproduction, if you will, of people driving while on their cell phones. Why? Because we're all rational decision makers, using the cost to us and the benefits to us to make our decisions. Very rarely do you find someone who includes costs to others when weighing a private decision. Essentially, you make the decision to be on the phone while driving because you consider only part of the cost to you. With negative externalities, because the private decision is based on costs that are too low from society's standpoint, the behaviors or products are overproduced from society's view. This market failure provides a role for the government to correct the market, i.e., bring the production back to the socially optimal level. In the case of cell phones, this is most often done by putting laws in place that ban such behavior while driving and have hefty fines attached if you're caught. This effectively raises the cost of engaging in such behavior and thus decreases the amount of the behavior that occurs. The same idea would apply to, say, a steel factory. There's a certain private cost.
Before we start talking about the steel company, rather than talk about cell phone usage, let's talk about a real issue that has been, I think, pretty successfully somewhat addressed. How about drunken driving? Was drinking and driving a huge issue and continues to be?
Yeah. Relatively.
Folks, what I'd ask you to do is ask your parents if what they say is a marked improvement, because I think it has.
Well, wasn't it like not even like a big deal?
Oh my God! I mean, when I think about it, it's shocking to me how people would go out and drink all day, all night, and get in the car and drive. And of course, this was before airbags. It was huge. People thought nothing. Not only did people think nothing, it was very common for corporations to throw big parties. You'd go and drink on them. Free. And then you'd get in your car and head home. Unfortunately, a lot of times you didn't make it. Or you killed a few people on the way. So how did that all change? Was it through fines? Let me ask you that. Well, what kind of laws? What happens now if you drink and drive?
You get arrested. They stop you and they will measure you, and if you don't pass, they'll arrest you.
They will arrest you. What happens then?
You go to jail.
You either pay a fine to get out, or if you're a chronic offender, bad things happen.
You get locked up for the night.
Yeah.
Until you sober up, and they let you go.
Yeah. The government really clamped down on, before it was, well, you know, I know the magistrate. That happened a lot. Because most drinking and driving, the police would take you in, and they'd take you before the magistrate. And in most communities, if you were a person of means, you knew the guy or gal, right? And they'd say, Alex, you know better than that. Get someone to drive you home next time, okay? But now, there's no next time, okay? So this was truly an externality. But despite all that, was that what really changed the laws? No. Does anyone, you guys may be young, I'm not even sure that this still exists. Does Mothers Against Drunk Driving still exist? I think it's
I hope not.
What's it called?
Mad.
I was just talking about how every lobbying group is Mothers Against something.
That really was the group that put such a face to drunk driving, okay? So it wasn't so much the fines, it was social pressure.
Yeah, once your friends don't think you're cool anymore, maybe you don't do it as much.
That's right. Okay, let's hear about steel plants now.
To producing steel, I'll assume that on the benefit or demand side, private and social are the same for now. But the production of steel also results in pollution, a cost to others in society. This means that the marginal social cost is greater than the marginal private cost. Left to its own devices, the steel market will be based on private costs and private benefits, yielding the price and quantity associated with equilibrium E1.
Can you all see why that cost is going up? We all understand why. This is, remember, marginal cost is simply a fancy word for what? Supply, right? And it's going up, why? Because it's no longer private, it's what? Private and
Public.
Social. We're saying we don't want to look, we want to be able to see across to the horizon. You've all seen pictures of the way Pittsburgh used to look, right? You couldn't see the street, never mind.
Steel is a very good example.
Yeah, it's a good example for this part.
What would society rather see? The socially optimal outcome would be based on social cost and social benefits, or equilibrium E2. Notice, this means society would like to see less production, meaning less pollution, and would be willing to pay a higher price to do so. This is where the government comes in. What is the government solution to a negative externality? Simple. Get the decision maker to internalize the external effect. Since the problem arises from the decision maker using costs that are too low, you need to somehow impose some additional cost so the decision becomes based on the level of social cost. This could be done by way of taxes, fines, regulation, or cleanup fees. Or, in the case of pollution, there's now a market for credits that allow you to pollute. If you're a clean producer, you'll have unused credits you can sell, which is an incentive for cleaner production. If you create a lot of pollution, you'll need to acquire extra credits to continue producing, which is also an incentive to cut back on pollution production. What about positive externalities? Just as you can make choices that impose costs on others, you can also make choices that result in benefits to others. If this is the case, then social benefits equal the private benefits of benefits to the decision maker, plus external benefits, benefits to others. In the case of a positive externality, social benefits exceed private benefits. Take education, for example. You decided to continue your education. Why is that? What are the benefits to you of making this decision? It might just be the love of learning, or because you know that education means a better, higher paying job in the future. But what about society? Society as a whole benefits from having a better educated populace. Highly educated, highly skilled workers tend to be innovators, which helps keep our economy moving forward. All of this is good, except for the fact that in a free market, education will be underproduced. This is true of any positive externality. Why? Because the private decision maker doesn't see the full benefit of education that society sees, so not as much education is produced. For the consumer of education, there's a certain private benefit. I'll assume private cost and social cost are going to be the same. Decision-making based solely on private costs and benefits results in equilibrium at E1. Society as a whole sees a greater benefit. If the equilibrium were based on social costs and social benefits, equilibrium would occur at E2. Society desires a greater level of education and is willing to pay more to achieve it. From a social standpoint, in a free market, education will be underproduced. What's the government solution to a positive externality? Well, get the decision maker to internalize the external effect. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Except that with a negative externality, we had to try to get the decision maker to see higher costs. With a positive externality, the government needs to somehow make the decision more beneficial to the private decision maker. In the case of education, the government may provide grant money, low-interest loans, or tax credits in order to provide added incentive to get more education. Next time, public good.
What good did, what is being offered to Pittsburgh public school kids?
Entered promise.
Which got reduced.
Pittsburgh promise money, right? Yep.
And I guess since it's got reduced, I guess that makes it, I guess that makes the cost more bigger for the students,
right,
for the class of 2017 and so on.
Right. But that was one of the incentives, to try to get students to see the benefit of continuing their education.
Right. That would be a social benefit, having a more educated society.
Right.
So they provide incentives.
Right. And those of you taking statistics, I'm sure at some point you'll see, I'm guessing Mr. Banzi has some problem in his book. The reason for that is the probability of being unemployed if you have a high school diploma is far greater than if you have a what? College diploma. So while initially you may not be making all that significantly more money or less money than a college graduate, the chance of throughout your life of being unemployed is significant. But I think actually there's data to support it. I think it's about a $15,000 increase. I mean, difference in
Year over year?
no, just initially.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So you're going to read chapter 11. Okay.
Yay.
We are calling this a day. Please, guys, again, I cannot tell you.
Yeah, 12 more minutes.
Don't forget about these videos. You want the light off or on?
Doesn't matter.
Off. Anyone want it on?
No. Actually, real good in the dark.
Oh, awesome. I think.